I have an esteemed partner with us today, and I am always amazed by the things that he tells us when he comes on to talk about the energy production in this country. But he is Ron Matthew, a U.S. Navy veteran, co-founder, CEO of Brevian Energy, specializing in microgrid technologies and renewable energy. I hope you got all of that. He's very, very deep and complex in his thinking about these issues. And his company, actually, Brevian Energy, they are committed to fighting the effects of climate change, and their mission is to bring affordable, reliable, renewable power to homes, businesses, and communities in every possible location. He actually works with disabled veterans business enterprise and a minority-owned business. So empowerinnovation.net, make sure he's going to give you some other places to go to get your information from about his company, but make sure you take a look at his website. It is outstanding. So what we're going to do is have a discussion today about clean energy infrastructure needed in rebuilding after natural disasters like tornadoes, hurricanes, heavy rains. All these things can have devastating effects. We know, as we watched with Helene, back in history we had Katrina and Rita, but we have these things happening more and more, and at higher degrees of intensity. So the need for his services are growing, not shrinking. So very good to have you here. How are you doing, Ron?
I'm doing wonderful, sir. Thank you for having me. It's always a great pleasure to be with you on your show.
Oh, fantastic. Following a disaster, establishing microgrids is really essential. And especially in areas that are isolated and they have power failures, and you can sort of leverage distributed energy resources and energy storage systems. So what is this? Why is it so important to bring that into a community that's just been devastated by a disaster?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that question because as you just alluded to, these types of natural disasters are happening more frequently, and they are happening with greater severity in most cases. One of the great things about microgrids is the resiliency factor that they present, because you're always generating your own electricity and you are storing it. You're your own closed loop per se. So you're not necessarily depending on the local investor-owned utility to provide your power. So
that's what a microgrid is. It's a contained system that is really under your control. Okay.
Absolutely. So it comes equipped with battery storage. You can even include diesel generators, or we prefer hydrogen generators that can make up your power source that can run 24/7, 365 without having to rely on the utility company, which in most cases, after big disasters or big storms like that, a lot of the power lines are down or unavailable, or they don't have the capacity to serve the demand that's going on at that particular time. So having things like microgrids will always ensure that you have power to, power up, vital things like refrigerators and lights and cooking equipment and things of that nature in those natural disasters.
Yeah, I remember responding to Hurricane Katrina back in the day, and one of the things that really struck me very heavily is when I got there, it was the silence. It was the lack of light. So you had no moving cars, you had no lights in any building, no street lights. Everything was down. The grid was completely down. So you didn't hear anything. All the birds were blown out of the area. And it was almost like a deafening silence. I've never been in an area that was so silent. And
especially in New Orleans. New Orleans is not a quiet place.
Oh, yes. It was very contrasting. Yeah, absolutely. So that kind of thing, it really brought home the importance of having electricity. And sometimes people are also, in those areas where they are requiring a ventilator. They're requiring something,
Absolutely.
to sustain their life.
CPAP machines,
CPAP, yeah,
oxygen,
yeah,
all kinds of vital medical equipment that requires power.
yeah,
And these people can't survive without those particular devices. So it's very crucial.
yeah. And and there was a thing. There was the founding principles of the National Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster is a national VOAD, but they were saying there were 4 C's: communication, coordination, collaboration, and cooperation. And
Mhm.
those 4 C's, it seems like you need power for all of them.
Everything. That's why we look for, particularly in our communities, we look for things, places we can create what's called resiliency hubs,
Uh,
places that have space, number one, that's adequate to service a lot of people. They may have a kitchen, refrigerators. We want to make sure we put microgrids on those locations so they can serve as, emergency centers for the community in times of distress.
Yeah, that's really important, because when you think about it, we are so technologically intertwined, and you can almost hear people gasping when their phone, runs out of power and they're running to, I had to plug this in somewhere, and
Absolutely.
they don't have that. They're really stressed out from that, and so we've
Well, we
become
look to make schools, things like schools and churches,
right.
areas like that. If we can provide 24/7 power to areas like that, they can be that beacon in the community where the people can come and charge their phones and make phone calls. And, in cases where, their homes have been destroyed or something like that, they can put cots there and people can be fed and things of that nature. So we look to those areas to put things like microgrids on them so they can be that light in the community and provide those services that are so desperately needed.
Yeah. And then, there were like 4 areas that you mentioned on your website, building efficiency. So that was the data centers. So
Mhm.
what does that involve? Data centers. Why are those important?
I mean, well, now the biggest buzzword in the country when it comes to technology is AI, or artificial intelligence.
Mm,
That requires a lot of computing power.
yeah.
So you're going to see there's a huge demand now for more and more capacity, which is going to require more and more of these data centers that house these computer programs and computer hardware to run these models. So you're seeing more and more data centers put up, and these data centers require quite a bit of power. And the best way, the most expensive way, and the most resilient way to do that, and the most sustainable way to do that, is to use microgrids to power these up, because the demand is only increasing.
Yeah, and then you also mentioned in on your website about energy sources and fuels. So there's like bioenergy, biofuels, combined heat and power, concentrating solar power, fuel cells, hydrogen, hydrogen fueling infrastructure, and other energy sources. Photovoltaics, and then wind technology. So it seems like it's a very complex infrastructure, but they all are trying to produce one thing: electricity, right?
That's it. I mean, it's a mixture of all of those.
Mhm.
And really, depending on your location, depending on how much space you have, depending on your demand, every situation is different, right? So a different combination of those power generation assets may be required for different situations. One thing we like to say about microgrids, if you've seen one microgrid, you've seen one microgrid, because they're all different.
Wow. Okay, wow. That's what we used to say about the public health departments back in my in my background.
Yeah, nothing is the same,
No,
And if
no,
somebody
nothing.
comes and just try to fit you into a cookie cutter, then they're
Right.
not really taking into account your specific requirements and your specific needs, because everybody's needs are totally different.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so
And I
that's
guess
really the key. It's almost designing a microgrid is almost like artistry.
oh yeah, I can imagine because and it will probably depend on you have local businesses too that maybe you have to get up and running, food distribution centers,
Mhm.
all that kind of stuff, where they need that energy and they need the power to get back on, as fast as possible. Uh,
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then so there's also software and software and systems. and you had distributed energy resource management systems,
Hmm.
energy management systems and platforms, energy security software, Internet of Things. That's the big monster out there, the Internet of
Yeah.
Things, and
IoT.
metering systems. So what is that all about? The software piece of it. Why is it so important to have that? I know you started talking about AI, and it has a critical role.
I mean, that's kind of it. There
Mhm.
are software applications out there that we use to optimize the output of these particular generation technologies.
Mhm.
It'll know at a certain point, run the battery for until it gets to a certain level, and at this point you turn it off and you go to the hydrogen fuel cell. And when the hydrogen fuel cell gets to a certain point, you kick that over to now generating from the solar. And after the solar starts producing at a certain level, it goes to, and all of these things are controlled by software. So it's no, little guy sitting around looking at a gauge and click things off. It's all done via software, and it's optimized via software.
Wow.
And even moving further into the future, using AI to even make even greater and more crucial decisions of when to power things up, and it predicting when demands are going to spike, and be prepared for all of those. So yeah, software is a very important aspect of what we do.
Yeah, because I know there's a thing going on now with Epic, the Epic system and that kind of thing,
Mhm.
and how that's an important system for hospital systems and for communication, for medical information, especially if you're in a disaster. You need to be able to get that information back and forth. If you're down with power, you have a problem on your hands trying to get certain information to help people. And there was one thing you have on there also about energy storage, batteries, electrochemical storage, grid
Mhm.
level energy storage applications, integrated distributed storage applications.
Mhm.
So this is something, I see people in my local community here that have solar panels on their roofs. And then now it's about, well, how much of a storage battery do you have? And I know the prices are starting to come down on a lot of these systems because it's becoming,
Significantly, yeah,
yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So maybe
Batteries
talk a little bit
play a
about that.
big role. Yeah,
Yeah.
batteries play a big role in how we are going to attack our energy shortage demands in the future.
Mhm.
Like right now, what people really don't understand is if you have solar, you're not really producing power for yourself. You are really getting credits for the power that you send to the grid.
Mhm.
So that's a big misnomer. A lot of people, have solar panels on their roof, and then there's an outage in their neighborhood, and then they're out as well. They're like, wait a minute, I have solar, but all you're doing is sending power to the grid and receiving credits for it. Unless you are totally detached from the grid, like you have a battery system, and you can make
Yeah.
that a microgrid by being able to island or being able to detach from the grid and sustain yourself.
Wow, I didn't realize that. Yeah, so that's a really something that someone needs to think about when they're getting solar panels. that
Yeah,
they,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. The people are surprised when they're out of power when they have solar panel on their roof. They're like, "Well, I don't understand." And
Wow.
at nighttime it doesn't no good anyway. So
Oh, right. That's true. Yeah, once the sun goes down.
absolutely. So this is
Yeah.
24/7,
Mhm,
365 power by implementing a microgrid.
mhm.
With more than 2 to 3 generation sources. Like
Yeah.
I said, you could have wind and batteries. You can have hydrogen fuel cells. You can have linear generators, even diesel generators, which still believe it or not make up a large portion of the microgrids that are out there served with diesel generators.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna ask you to give, a way that people can get in touch with your company or to see it. So, if you have a phone number, something that they can go to.
Absolutely. My personal phone number, you can reach me directly,
Mhm.
760 Again, 760-925-5500. That's my personal cell phone. Or
Mhm.
you can, reach out to us at sales at Brevian. That's Brevian is B as in Bravo, R as in Romeo, E as in Edward, V as in Victor, I as in India, A as in Apple, N as in November, energy.com. Again, that's sales at brevianenergy.com. You can email us or you can visit our website. We have a lot of great information to digest. You can become more familiar with what microgrids are and how they act at brevianenergy.com.
Mhm. And see, there was a purpose for me to ask you to put that out right now, because what this does is I can see so many job areas created by this. I mean, just the technology for developing cells and the software management and the data management on the backside of things. You have so many areas here, and this is part of the infrastructure rebuilding, green technologies and all that are going out there. So what about that, the job market? What do you see happening with that? And is there a greater call for people?
Um, no, I don't know after last night. That's another story.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh,
our energy grid is going to be remade over the next
mhm.
10 to 15 years. So they're going to be remade with renewable technology.
Okay.
And there is a desperate need for
Mhm.
installers, designers, application engineers. There's a whole industry being born out there. And veterans are going to be called upon really to lead the charge in helping build out this workforce. One, because of the dedication that we receive by being in the military,
Mhm.
learning to work in stressful environments and learning how to be team players. I think it's going to really require the skill set of veterans to make this happen.
Yeah. And as soon as you brought up the topic of veterans, I started thinking about, with the microgrid, you also are outside of the mainstream energy production network. And many times they're being attacked now, hacked, and those kinds of things. So this may actually be added layer of security.
Energy security, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
This is great for energy security. So if you have, and you go into a city that has 1 million people and one power plant, you take out that power plant, you take out 1 million people. But
Ah,
if you go into a city that has 1 million people and have 1,000 power plants, because so many people are deploying their own, it's much more difficult to affect that with one strike. So having distributed energy is much more reliable. It's actually a lot cheaper because you're not worried about all of the transmission that you'd have to do from one centralized location, which has been a big barrier to progress, is those transmission lines. We have a real need for more transmission between regions right now. So deploying microgrids is a great way to address that problem.
mhm. Yeah, you seemed pretty excited when you said the word hydrogen for fuel source.
Oh
So
yes.
why is that? What is it about hydrogen?
Well, I see the promise in hydrogen. Number one, I see it as a fuel source because we're pretty familiar with how gasoline works. We have the infrastructure already in place, and it could really be pretty similar to how we're already used to doing it, except we don't have to fill up every 300 miles. That could be filling up every 3,000 miles.
Oh,
With the
wow.
technology that's looking to be deployed, over the next 5 to 10 years. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about the possibilities that we do with hydrogen. We use hydrogen fuel cells as
Mhm.
well. There's no combustion.
Mm.
The only output from the thing is water. So they're much more sustainable than what we see and what we're using today.
Yeah, because one of the things that they have with these things with nuclear reactors, like just maybe it's a year ago, where they had the first successful sustained fusion reaction.
Mhm.
To make helium out of hydrogen, and that's what it's making me think of, where you don't have nuclear waste,
Yes.
as byproducts, and So that's the thing that we have to really look towards, is with this whole thing about global warming and all of that. You have to have a few energy source that is not going to keep contributing to that problem, because we're making things worse, over time. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think that the sources that we have right now are not the end all be all. I
Mm-hmm.
think they're the good for right now, but in the future, they're going to be, like you say, the fusion, I think, is going to be the holy grail. When you can have that type of power at room temperature without all of the hazards, and can just keep going, for all practical purposes forever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, who who's going to deny that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so what do you see? Anything exciting you see on the horizon from the technological perspective? Is it getting easier to have these microgrids, transporting them, getting them into zones where you have disasters, those kinds of things? And I'm not
Absolutely.
sure. Yeah. Okay. Mhm.
There are several advances that are coming. Number one, they're making the panels. Right now, they're averaging about 500 watts of power that they generate. It's going to quadruple over the next 2 to 3 years, with the same size panel being able to produce about you know uh, megawatt kilowatts instead of just a couple watts. So you're going to see much more of that deploying. You're going to see a much more diverse set of energy storage technologies. Instead of just the lithium right now, you're going to see flow batteries, gel batteries. You're going to see things like supercapacitors that they're going to be rolling out. So innovation is definitely is strong at work in renewable energy right now. So we're just going to see how these things play out, and be ready to deploy them and take advantage of their utility.
Okay. Well, we have a couple of minutes to go. My producer's always on my back about making sure we have the show. But we're
Efficiency.
gonna have you back, I know, because your the information you're providing I think, is a clear vision to the future. And I just have to thank you for your service and for putting together a company that is really addressing a critical issue for us,
Right.
and providing jobs and all that for our veterans and others. I'm really in awe of what you're doing. um, but in closing, what are some of the things that, and I want you to give your information again so people can actually see this on your website and make sure that they are following this. um, and for people who are looking for jobs and all of that, consider this as a new horizon that's really coming up. It's probably not so much of a new horizon. It's been here for a little bit, but it's actually going to blossom. It's not going to. Someone I was speaking to, one of the generals the other day, and he said, there's a difference between things growth and blossoming. And he said, weeds can grow, but flowers blossom. So
That's
this is
right.
a blossoming process. And I really I'm looking forward to more and more from you. But just give me some closing thoughts on this whole area, and again, the contact information and what people need to know.
I know for me, one of the biggest things for us is, as I mentioned earlier, there's going to be a huge transition of
Mhm.
our energy grid over the next 10 to 15 years. And one of the things, I don't want us to just be the off takers of this energy. I want us to be part of the workforce. I want us to be part of the development of these technologies. I want us to be part of the ownership stake, because that's a big key and a part of what we're doing. In some of the community projects that we're doing, we are actually setting up a special purpose vehicle that allows the community to invest into these projects.
Mhm.
So, we want to do everything to help the community and not necessarily just investor-owned utilities. And for us, you can get in touch with us again at Brevian Energy. BrevianEnergy.com is the website. You can reach me at 760-925-5500 is my number, or you can reach us at sales@BrevianEnergy.com. We'd love to have that conversation with you.
Yeah, and Rod, I want to have you back on for a special show, and for you to start talking a little bit about the educational requirements, why it's important to go to school, why and to get the training, yeah, for this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that I think that's really a key point,
Oh,
and then you
whenever
can't.
you want to have me, Colonel Arnold, I am more than happy to be on anytime with you, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. And we're going to move on to the next segment. Stay with us, and thank you so much, Rod Matthewson. Happy Veterans Day.